Hi, everybody. It's Mike Swanson here in Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks for joining our webinar today, How Does a Plaintiff Law Firm Owner Retire? It's something that any plaintiff lawyer should be thinking about, regardless of age or where you are in your career. It's something I encourage our clients to think about. And so we have tapped into the expertise today, or will be tapping into the expertise of Michael Smith. He'll be joining us from his office today. Michael, are you there? Give him a moment.
I am here, Michael. How are you?
There you are. I'm doing terrific. How are things in Florida today?
Everything is good. Nice and warm and humid. We're expecting some pretty heavy rains coming over the weekend with the pending hurricane. So hopefully it's all going to be good.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. I have some friends that are out buying water and supplies to get ready in case they say you should be prepared to be without power for a week. Wow.
Well, fortunately, we have all of that in place. We have a generator at our office and it's all taken care of. So we're in good shape.
Very smart, very smart. Well, hey, we'll get started. Let me share the screen here. And so today's webinar is brought to you by Advocate Capital. Disclosure, I am the CEO of Advocate Capital. We are the purveyors of the AvoTrack Case Expense Funding Service, but that's not the topic of today's webinar. This is me, but more importantly, this is Michael Smith, and he is with SBC Associates, and I've known Michael for years. He has really helped a lot of our clients at Advocate with a variety of business issues at the law firm, and has really helped some of our clients grow and, importantly, be positive cash flow and build net worth. So I thought there's nobody better than Michael to help us understand that. First, a disclaimer. This is meant for informational purposes only. Please don't take or fail to take any actions based upon what you see or hear today. Always consult your independent professional, whether it's legal or accounting. I am not an accountant, CPA, or a lawyer. Michael, I don't know if you are.
I am not. No,
yeah.
I am not.
Well, I think we both have learned by doing, not necessarily reading about it. That certainly is the case for you. So let's talk a little bit about retirement. I think there are a lot of plaintiff lawyers who don't plan ahead and have to essentially, die at their desk, right? They can never retire. It's kind of unfortunate. So let's hear from you about your approach to how a plaintiff lawyer can think about retirement.
Well, it's an interesting topic because generally speaking, it's not just confined to attorneys or plaintiff attorneys with respect to retirement. It's a much broader issue than that. And businesses in general is kind of human nature is such that if you're not confronted with a decision or a choice that you need to make, you tend to defer it. So the question becomes one of, if somebody begins to think about the process, and I'm guessing the people who are on the webinar today and in attendance, the reason they are is because they're giving some thought to it. And if they're giving thought to it, then you're probably a little ahead of schedule, and maybe you might be behind schedule. But at the end of the day, it's not too different than doing a strategic plan, which I do a lot of work in strategic planning. And that is that you have to have a clear vision in your own mind of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. It's an issue about, I'd like to either transition or move to a place where I'm not as dependent upon in my firm, or I just ultimately want to retire. You really have to start thinking about it 2, 3, 4, 5 years in advance, as you would in a strategic plan. If you say, I have a vision for where I want my firm to be in 5 years, right. It's not much difference to say, do I have a vision of where I want to be able to pull the plug or move out of my current practice? And that's probably going to be at least a 3 to 5 year window, depending upon the options that you explore, that you pursue.
Right. So the 3 to 5 year window, what should a lawyer be doing in that window? Is that the planning period?
It's really starting to put to paper, what your game plan is, and there's really a host of options. I think at the very cornerstone, my advice to the clients that I work with is really think about this in broader terms than just one decision that you're reaching, but really take a look at strategically, where would you like your life to proceed? What would you like it to look like? And I'm a big proponent in what I would call strategic life planning. And it really is stepping back and taking inventory of what's going on in your life. And I try and break it down into basically 6 dimensions, of which career or my practice or my law firm is one of the 6 elements. So, there are other elements to consider. One is, how am I positioned financially? In the process that I often advise people on, and if anyone's interested, after this program, I can send them a copy of a document that might be helpful. But it really is taking a look at the 6 dimensions of life. One is career, one is financial, a third is physical, a fourth is relationships that I have in my life, and then another is avocational. What do I do for fun? And if you really carefully evaluate each dimension of your life, you can start saying, okay, which ones do I want to really put some time and energy into? And if career is one of them, and you come up with a level of satisfaction where you say, I'm just not enjoying as much as I used to, I'm really feeling the pressure of my situation, or, I'm really doing pretty good, but I've got other things I want to do in my life.
Yeah.
You really have to get crystal clear in terms of what's your objective, why are you doing it? If you're doing it out of a sense of frustration or anxiety, there may be some things that you can do in the short and the longer term to basically fix it. I find a lot of the people that I engage with where they feel captive of their situation. They don't have the latitude to do the things that they might like to do, even though they enjoy practicing law. It's just there's too much dependence upon them to be in the office every single day. And so the question becomes one of, what's your motive? Why are you really thinking about retiring? Is it just it's the right time in life and it's time for me to move on? Yeah. And if it is, that's a laudable goal to shoot for. Then the question becomes one of, how do you really maximize the value of the business that you've developed? And what I see more often than not is somebody's taken out, a good living. They're making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in their business. They're able to have a number of benefits that business owners have. But when you really take a look at it, the real value of a law firm is, what is the goodwill that you created over time? And what is that worth? And how do you maximize the value? How do you liquidate the goodwill and the client base that you've established over many, many years? And that's where you get into, really taking a look at options. And options are, what do I want to do with my practice? Do I have a younger attorney or a group of attorneys that might be interested in acquiring an ownership interest in the firm? And if so, you can begin to set up a situation where you either sell shares of a practice, depending upon legally how you're set up, and or sharing profitability, if you will, based upon somebody buying into the firm. So if you've got that situation, it's really identifying, do I have the right people in place? Are these people who can take this practice and continue it and continue to have this practice flourish in the future if I transition ownership to them? And if you do, then it's a grooming process. It's a mentoring process. And, my belief is the best way to do it is to be paid for your practice long after you're gone, where you have a revenue stream where people have either bought you out up front or they continue to keep you in a percent of profit sharing over a number of years. And I often use a reducing scale. So I look at a situation where somebody's getting ready to transition their practice and they want to bring in a younger or 2 or 3 other people, younger partners, then let's set up a deal where they pay you out for, a percent interest of profitability after you've retired. So for the first year, let's say it's 50%. The second year, maybe it's 40%. The third year, maybe it's 30%. The fourth year, it's down to 20%, and then maybe 10%. But you're being paid out over a number of years. You're not having to be there. Or do a direct sale, where you're selling your shares of stock and you're willing to pass on the inventory of cases that you have and the goodwill that you've developed with the name and the name recognition that you have within the firm. Because that's the inherent value in the firm. It's not what you're pulling out day to day, year to year, but it's really taking a look at, how do I capitalize on this, and who's going to pay me for the transition I'm willing to make in my business. So,
yeah, Mike, one of the things I've seen some lawyers do is name their law firm something other than their personal name. So sometimes it's a name of someone who doesn't actually exist, but many times it'll be something like, Georgia Injury Law Center or something like that. I just made that up. I don't think there is a Georgia Injury Law Center. Have you seen that done? And what do you think of that in terms of goodwill?
It's happening more, but I think ego-wise, I think most of us are really interested in getting our name on the door,
right,
and gaining name recognition. I mean, especially people that are advertising, doing TV advertising or billboards, or on the internet heavily and using their website. And so you're seeing more and more where that transitions over time, where they go to a more generic name, where the names of the firm aren't the partners of the firm. One of the things that drives me crazy is where you see 5 names, and you can't even pronounce them, and the person's answering at the reception desk, and it's like, it takes 5 seconds to get it out before they can find out who they're talking to. So I think
just say law firm.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, keeping the name relatively brief and being very strategic about changing the names. When I see there's a transition occurring in the practice, and let's say it's Michael Smith and Associates, and Mike Swanson wants to join me, and he's a junior guy, we may change it to Michael Smith and Swanson and Associates. And then after Michael Smith has been gone for 2 years or 3 years, we transition it to Swanson and Associates. So there's ways in which you can do that. But I think name recognition is an important dimension, and especially if you're doing the advertising, because you're putting the face with the name as opposed to a more generic firm. I mean, if you take a look at people like John Morgan, Morgan & Morgan, Morgan's got hundreds of attorneys. And anytime he adds a partner or doesn't add a partner, you're not changing the basic name of the firm. So you have to be very careful and strategic about how you position that.
Yeah, because a lot of firms are investing hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars a year in building that brand recognition. So, changing it can affect the brand value significantly. And I think thinking about the name of the law firm strategically with a more long-term view seems to make sense to me, and could make a transition or outright sale a little easier. If somebody wants to sell their law firm and it's Michael Smith and Associates, and they're not willing to leave their name behind to be used at least for a little while, I don't think that the value someone would put on that firm is nearly as high as they might think it, because like you say, the hidden asset really is that goodwill and the brand recognition in the marketplace, which has been built up over years, and renaming it outright kind of just hits the reset button, and you have no brand left. You have an operating system and you have people and some case inventory, and that's about it. How have you seen valuations done for transitions or for outright
businesses? If somebody has any type of business that they want to sell, there's a number of methodologies that you can use. A very common methodology is, if you have a professional service business, you determine what the net profits are. The more common terminology from an accounting standpoint is, what is the EBITDA? And the EBITDA is basically net profits before tax and depreciation.
Yeah.
So let's say you've got a $2 million practice, and if you take out all of the owner's compensation or the partner's compensation, all of the benefits associated with it, and what you're left with is what are the net operating costs. All of the benefits and all of the compensation that the owner is taking out is effectively EBITDA. So let's say on a $2 million practice, somebody has a $500,000 net profit. If you take all their compensation, all their benefits, all the deductions that they legally can take, and let's say it's $500,000.
Right.
Professional service businesses, generally speaking, the EBITDA number and multiplier changes depending upon what's happening in the marketplace. But if you can get somewhere in the 5, 6, 7 times EBITDA for the value of the firm, that's probably a pretty good number. So let's say it's $500,000 is the profit number. If you, you can get in the 5 times range, you're doing pretty good. Then the question becomes, how do you get paid out?
Right. So the saying of value, how does that happen, right?
Professional service businesses, they want to ensure that not only the work you have in progress, the cases you have in inventory are there, but also that the name recognition and the goodwill that's been developed, it's going to continue to bring in business. That's what they're paying for. So more often than not, in a professional service business, anybody who's acquiring or becoming a partner, they want to ensure that they're not paying the money out until the business has continued to come in. So you'll often see in accounting firms, financial service firms, engineering firms, all types of professional service practices, there's always a clawback, if you will. We'll pay you X number of dollars up front, and then we'll pay you over a number of years based upon the performance of the law firm. That's why you want to make sure that if you're selling your practice to somebody who's taking it over, that they have the wherewithal, the ability, and the competence to basically continue that practice on. Now, one of the things that I think is really worth thinking about, if you've got a really good practice and you're just tired of having to be there every single day, then the opportunity could be, why do you need to sell the practice? Why do you need to transition out of the practice? If you generally like the practice of law, you just don't like the situation you've gotten yourself into where you have to be there 6-7 days a week,
right,
and you're just tired of having to do it. Then it becomes a question of how do you strategically build that practice up over time where effectively the business is working for you and you're not working for the business. So Michael Gerber wrote, in his book, The E-Myth, which is a great book.
Yeah.
And he's written a number of renditions of it, The E-Myth Revisited. The concept of working in your business as opposed to working on your business. Working in your business is really doing every day what you're doing, and that's you're really occupied. You're really an employee to your own organization.
Right.
Working on the business is, how do I generate the cases, whatever mechanism you're using, whether it's your own name recognition, business development that you're doing within the community, social activities that you're involved in, advertising, billboards, the internet, however that business is coming in. If you can create a constant influx of business into your law firm, then the question becomes one of how do you structure it so that this business can be transacted and the cases can be handled without your being there or without your direct involvement. And if you take a look at people like John Morgan, my guess is John Morgan hasn't seen a courtroom in many years because he's not practicing law. He's practicing business, and he's a businessman and a very astute businessman. So anybody can do that. The question is, you've got to transition out of doing the work, doing the cases, and setting up the systems and the organization. And what the vast majority of law firms really, really lack is what I would call a chief operating officer. And some people call it an office manager. Some people call it a firm administrator. Some people call it, other names. But if you can find the right person who understands accounting, who understands people and human resources, who has some sense or knowledge of technology and the internet and computers, somebody that has the ability of versatility to handle and knowledge of those elements of the business, and that person runs the day-to-day activity. They do the hiring, they do the firing, they get the consultant and or the technology company to handle the computers, and they either handle some of the finances or they oversee the finances to make sure that cash flow is being managed, bills are being paid, there's reserves in the bank account, they're managing bank relationships. And often what happens is in law firms, and it's a conundrum, it's a dilemma. Most people start out and they have a really good secretary. And that really good secretary starts to take on a little bit of accounting and takes on a little bit of human resources. And the old Peter principle kicks into gear. You bet. They've got somebody who's been with them for 15 or 20 years and she's just loyal to the T's. The last thing you'd ever think about is letting her go. And how can I possibly hire somebody to come in and take over because she knows more than I'll ever know about it. And so the question becomes dealing with that difficulty. But I have clients today that spend maybe 1 day a week in the office, and they may not be in the office for a month.
I know a couple of them.
Business is running.
They're on their sailboat. That concept of the Peter principle really is true. And we've been evaluating law firms now every day for the past 20 years in terms of their business model or cash flow and these kinds of things when we do our underwriting. And in fact, those of you who signed up for this webinar got a copy. I think it was the 12 most common mistakes, financial mistakes law firms make. And one of them, we call it promoting the receptionist to CFO, right? It's not like it's done in one day, but slowly over time, they just say, well, here's QuickBooks, go on YouTube and figure out how to use it. And before you know it, it's not fair to the employee, really. It's not smart, but they're too busy. And back to your other point of profitability, Michael, taking EBITDA and applying a multiple of, let's say, 5 to 8, I think a good takeaway from that for me is that we see law firms who are growing revenues, but not growing profits. So they're not really increasing the value of their firm because they're not generating enough free cash flow. Have you seen that before?
See it all the time. Saw it in my business. In 1999, I had 15, 16, 17 people working for me full time. I was working 7 days a week. And this will be very familiar, I think, to some of the people who've tuned in today.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's generating all the business. The relationships are my relationships with the clients. I'm delegating the work. And it was really interesting. I kind of stepped back and took a look at it. And an opportunity arose where I could travel around the world for 6 months, which I won't bore you with the details, but I elected to go that direction. And I kind of blindly moved into it, and I transferred all of my employees to a client of mine that was an accounting firm. And they wanted to get into the business that I was in. And I came back and I said, why would I be doing that? I'm working really, really hard, and I don't know that I'm making the kind of money that I could. And I transitioned. And the transition was, I started being a solo, doing what I'm doing. And that was coming on 20 years ago. Never been happier, never made more money, never had less stress. And when I get up in the morning, any decisions I need to reach, I talk to the guy in the mirror. And that's it.
There's a lot to be said for that. Some law firms also make the mistake of thinking, well, if I just grow bigger, life will be better. But we've seen law firms where the firm gets bigger, the employees get more and more employees, so your payroll grows, but the partner's not making any more money. They're making the same amount of money they made 10 years ago.
Well, you take a look at what's happening in the legal market, and you'll see on these TV ads, for, whether it's Roundup or, whatever the latest product liability issue, opioids or whatever. And you're seeing more and more law firms that are moving in a direction that they become marketing firms. And what they're doing is they're generating the cases, and they're creating the referrals. They're spitting them out to people who may be on this program, or other attorneys. And they're getting anywhere from 30 to 40 to 50% of the fees. And they're handling virtually nothing but the intake process and handling the front end of the case. And you know what? They're making a boatload of money, and they're really not trying cases, and they generally are not taking any of the financial risks of cost advancements up front. So it's all about working smarter, not harder. And if you're working and you have more and more people and more costs, and your income isn't really moving in the direction where you're getting multiples of what you used to make, then why are you doing it?
Right.
Just working hard, taking on more responsibility, taking on more debt, only to basically make the same kind of money that you're making. Life's too short.
We've had, not only is that a quality of life issue, but just getting ready for retirement even. If you can cut back on the size of your firm, but increase your profitability, you're actually having more fun, less stress, and your law firm is going to be worth more because it's about cash flow ultimately. So where does someone start? And I want to make sure we save time here for Q&A at the end, because I'm sure some of our viewers are going to have some questions. But where they're watching this, they know they need to think about retirement. That's why they're watching this. How do you get started?
I think first you have to get crystal clear about what your objectives are. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? So if your objective is that I want to be in a position where my firm is no longer dependent on me day in and day out, that's one objective.
Right. And by a certain date, right?
I want to be able to close this thing down, cash out. That's a different objective. Third objective might be I want to be able to transition my practice to my younger partner or my younger attorneys where they pay me out over a number of years. That's yet another objective.
Right.
So really analyzing what are the range of options that I've got, what appears to be the best option given the situation I'm in. Do I have the right people in place? Do I have a really good office manager, chief operating officer who can handle day-to-day operations? That might say, I may be able to pull back and exit this business while the business is working for me and I'm generating cash flow, and I'm kind of inactive, but I'm not retired. I still have a business. It's running. How many people in America have businesses that they never go into?
I don't know.
Generate cash every day and profitability every day. Why couldn't a law firm do that? And they can, but it's a choice. So once you get clear about what your objectives are, then the devil is in the details and the devil is in the action. And to give you a metaphor, the weekend before last, I was in Leadville, Colorado. Leadville, Colorado is the highest city in North America.
Wow.
And they have a race up there. It's called the Leadville 100 Trail Run.
Wow.
And my son-in-law told me about 8 months ago that he wanted to do it. And could I, help him? So I went out to Leadville, Colorado, and I was up for 35 hours straight, helping him get over the finish line, which he finished in 28 hours and 33 minutes.
My goodness.
And I had run it myself previously 4 times, so I know the trail and I know the route and all of that. If somebody says at 64, I want to retire, it's the same kind of thing as saying, I want to run the Leadville 100 tomorrow. Ain't going to happen. It takes a lot of advanced thinking, planning, organizing. So I've got to put together a game plan. Every single week, I'm making progress towards the implementation of that game plan. And that may be, how do I build my inventory of cases? That may be, how do I mentor and do I have the right attorney in the firm to take over my firm?
Right.
Do I have the right relationships where I can start referring cases out on a more steady stream and doing less of the work and getting the referral fees to help my income increase without having to do it? So it's when you take a look at your total game plan, as my son-in-law did for Leadville, what do I eat? How do I deal with sleep deprivation? How do I keep on my feet? How do I deal with pain management? When my head is telling me stop, how do I keep going? So in a law firm, it's, do I have enough active strategies in place that if I execute with precision, I can be certain that I'm going to hit the finish line when my target is to finish in a year, 2 years, or 3 years, or whatever it is.
Right.
No action.
Makes sense. And so we're going to share your contact information here at the end, Michael, because I know a lot of our viewers are thinking, I'm so busy already, I don't know how to do that. And if you don't, I'd encourage you to reach out to Michael. He's been a great benefit to many of our clients over the years, and many of them have made the transitions he's talking about. Some of them are still somewhat active in the business, but I see him on Facebook on their yacht once in a while. Others have retired and moved on, but overall, I think the amount of happiness that they're enjoying is a lot higher, because not everybody wants to totally get out of it, right? I'd like to share one other strategy as well, if I might, Michael. And we've had clients come aboard specifically for this reason, as they start to think about retirement and they maybe haven't done as good a job as they wish they had done in terms of setting aside cash and building net worth outside the law firm. They've been able at times to come in, become an advocate client, unlock the cash they have tied up in their case expenses, which sometimes is in the millions of dollars. It's their after-tax cash. It's tied up. It enables them to free that up, that cash, get it outside the practice, and allows the cost of the financing to go through the cases for a very low net cost to the law firm. So that's just one way to use our product, but we've definitely seen that, because how do you get the cash out of your cases someday is a big question. And I heard one lawyer tell me, well, I always assumed that was a really really crappy savings program. I know my cash is in my practice, but I don't think folks ever really get it out unless they somehow leverage it. But that's something I've seen done. So great. Well, let's open up for some questions. Folks, in your dialog box, you have a chance to type in some questions. Here's a question. New York does not allow a firm to use a trade name. Oh, okay. So apparently in New York, you're probably not allowed to use a trade name. So maybe state by state that's regulated. I'm not aware of that. In Florida, I've seen it done, and I think I've seen it done in like New Hampshire. I've seen it done in Connecticut. So it must be state by state on that. If you have other questions, type them into the dialog box. We'll wait for a few more to come in. Let me jump ahead while we're waiting for the next question to come in. This is Michael's contact info. Again, Michael's been very helpful to a lot of our clients. It's the kind of expertise we don't have at Advocate, so we like to bring in seasoned, experienced professionals to help clients or refer clients to them. So I encourage you to give Michael a call or an email if you have a question about your situation. Okay, let's see. What's more common, outright purchase of a law firm or a transition over time? What do you see done most, Mike?
It's definitely more of a transition because the law firm is not it's not like a typical business, if you will, because it's a professional service. So you virtually all professional service firms, they're going to be paid out if it's being purchased by someone outside of the firm. Mm-hmm. It's going to be paid out over a period of time. Mm-hmm. You'll see some of the larger law firms that have really made huge progress in acquiring offices throughout the country, and there's a number of them. They effectively will cut a deal where they are willing to pay somebody up front. You stay with the firm for a year, year and a half, until we can transition our name into your space, and then they basically do the buyout. But more often than not, if it's a situation where you've got people you're either going to be promoting up, if you will, to take over the practice, then it's going to be a transition over a number of years. Or if you're going to start referring your cases out, in a lot of situations, the goodwill that you've developed, if that's going to continue even after you've decided to retire, I mean, that's effectively an annuity, because if you still can generate cases, create the referral, and in Florida, I'm seeing, a number of my clients, they're paying as much as 30-40%, and in some cases even higher, depending upon the cases. And it varies around the country. You see the more common is 25% across the country in most states, but it varies greatly. So if you have the ability to generate cases, you don't have to, do the work. You can refer it out to someone else. And I have a lot of clients that all of their work, they do no advertising, none. They do, basically it's all referral from other attorneys. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have some clients who do that too. Okay, here, let's see here. I'm trying to read these small print here. I'm getting older. Is there an active market for firms or people looking to take over and buy successful law firms? If so, where does one go to access interested buyers? How would you find an interested buyer, Mike?
I think the interested buyers, and you have to be careful with this, is potentially your competition. Who are the people that you're competing with on a regular basis? And if you've got a substantial practice, then you may in fact be able to put together a strategic alliance for a period of time before they take your practice over.
That's kind of tricky though, isn't it? Calling up your competitor and saying, hey.
Well, I'll give you an example. I just did a project not long ago in New York, where I was working for a client, retained me to come in and just do an assessment of the law firm financially and partner relationships, take a look at who they promoted to partner, take a look at the staff that they currently had in place, to just kind of give them an independent, objective assessment of what I saw in their operation. And it just so happened that they had some contact with younger people, younger guys that were maybe 20 years younger than them. These are guys that are a little bit older. They're thinking about retirement, but they haven't yet pulled the plug. And talks had broken off between them, but they had some discussions. Maybe it makes sense for us to join up. And as a result of just getting some familiarity with the firm and just understanding, I said, hey, give me an opportunity. I'll reach out to these guys. They're competitors, but they're also people that if you're able to put together, a 1-on-1, you could make 3. You could create some real synergism. And we were able to needle together, based upon my contacting them, needle together an understanding and agreement, and they ultimately merge. And it gives the opportunity for the senior partners to basically transition out of the practice while they still have cases coming in, and they'll get paid out over a number of years. So
that's what we've seen too. I mean, the market for your law firm is most likely going to be the market you're in, because people. The market for your law firm is probably going to be the market you're already in, because people are going to know you there. You're going to have relationships. They're going to know about your brand. They're going to be able to take over the office, not have to drive 6 hours to another city. It can be done, but most of the time we see mergers and acquisitions happening within the same market, which is difficult. So maybe bringing in a third party can be a help to at least you get this next one. Here's the next question. Oftentimes in a plaintiff's practice, the head partner is a primary business generator. If other lawyers are referring cases to the firm, they want to know that the person is going to be the lead lawyer on the case. So if that lead lawyer retires or scales back significantly, how can you maintain that goodwill with your referral sources? Have you seen creative ways of dealing with that problem?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a tough one. The best concept, the best idea that I've got around that is that you have to get to a place that if you have a strong relationship with that referral source, and I have a client in Atlanta, for example, gets a ton of referrals from another attorney that's in another city, comes into Atlanta, and this person is a very strong-willed referral source. They know exactly what they want, and the reason they're referring it to, the individual that I'm working with is because he gets incredible results. The guy's a rock star. He pulls rabbits out of hats. He'll take a couple $100,000 case and he'll make it $1 million case, and the referral source knows that. The key is, how do I methodically and systematically over time create an opportunity where I bring in a second chair into my case if I'm getting it referred from outside, and create a higher level of confidence within the referral that my second chair is in fact creating some results. And so it's something that you can't, it's not like a light switch. It's something that takes place over a period of a 6-month, 9-month, year and a half. And the thing you got to be very, very careful of is that the referral source does not become so enamored with the person who you're bringing in that they now become the referral source.
Right.
Then you lose the opportunity. So it's a tricky trade-off, but if you're putting it together in a transition plan, it can work very effectively.
Right. Great. Let's see. We have other questions. Okay. One thing they could do to improve GoToWebinar is to make the print smaller, print larger in the questions for older guys like me. Okay, Mike, I think that's about it for the questions that I'm seeing. We sure do appreciate you being with us today. It's been very, very helpful. Again, Mike's contact information is on the screen. I know he'd be happy to speak with you. He's helped a lot of our clients. If I can help you in any way, let me know. I'm not a consultant. I will help you for free if you're a plaintiff lawyer. If you're a defense lawyer, don't call me. This webinar was brought to you by Advocate Capital. For more information, visit our website. For more content on how to help you in your practice as a plaintiff lawyer, visit lawpracticechannel.com. And thank you for attending. Mike, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Mike.
We sure appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you. Hey, stay safe with that hurricane coming.
Will do. You take care of yourself. Have a good week.
All right. Thank you all. Thanks for viewing, everyone.